Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And today's range report is definitely on something interesting, but it's an older design. And this is actually from a series of pistols that people have been asking me to review. However, I've never had a chance to get to hold one or shoot one before now. Today we're going to be taking a look at the P95DC from Ruger. The P series of pistols from Ruger were a long-running semi-automatic line from that company, and they had many different models, they had many different features. The DC in this model name means it has the decocker, not the manual safety. The 95 was introduced in 1996 and it was the first in the series that had a polymer frame. This is definitely a big and robust gun. If you look at the aesthetics of this gun, I think it kind of dates it. It's definitely from the late 80s, early 90s, kind of has that look. It's kind of larger, kind of wider, chambered in 9mm. And this gun originally came out during the assault weapons ban here in the United States in the mid-90s. So many of them shipped with 10-round magazines. However, when that ban expired, you were able to buy higher capacity magazines. So I do have one that is 15 rounds and one that is 10 rounds. So I'm really excited to see what this gun shoots like, because I've not always been the biggest Ruger fan. I've had issues with them. But who knows? Everyone says this is a fantastic pistol, so I can't wait to review it. But before we get into the things that I like and don't like, as always, I want to thank the people that make these videos possible. First and foremost is the owner of this awesome pistol. His name is Colin. He's a fan of the channel and a subscriber, and he has lent a bunch of guns for me to review, so thank you so much, Colin. I always want to thank my Patreon supporters, because through their monthly donations and support, they always help keep the lights on around here. You guys know us firearms content creators on YouTube are always struggling to keep the content coming, and my Patreon supporters go a long way. And if you want to see all of these videos early like them, you can join for as little as $1 a month. There's a link in the description below. And as always, I want to thank and give a huge shout out to my primary sponsor of all of my range reports. His name is Mark, and he's the president of a company called Brownworks. And you guys know I always give Brownworks a huge shout out in all of my range reports. He has been a sponsor here of my channel for over a year, and I can tell you he does so much for me. And I know he's done a lot for my subscribers, because he makes some of the best grips in the world. I honestly think they are the best grips in the world. Brownworks is a custom grip company. Mark over there is an artist. He's a craftsman. You guys hear me rant and rave about his work. He is always making new, innovative, and creative things. All of his grips are unique, one of a kind, and tailor-made to his customers' needs and desires. He can make grips out of laminate woods, exotic woods, finish them in a variety of finishes and colors, put on custom textures, and even put on custom logos. Anything you can imagine, he can create. And he makes grips for guns like Colt 1911s, Beretta 92, CZ75s, Browning high powers, and many, many more. So I'm going to ask you guys to go over to his website, see what he has to offer. I'm going to put a link in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. And as I always say, he's more busy making these amazing grips for his customers than he is updating his website. So if you don't find what you're looking for over there on his website, please contact Mark. I guarantee you he can hook you up and make what you want. And when you contact him, please tell him the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so let's once again talk a little bit about what this gun is. This is the Ruger P95DC from the P series of pistols, chambered in 9mm, double stack with the decocker. I looked this up online. The internal mechanics were borrowed from the SIG P220, and you can kind of see it from the barrel hood, and when you open the action up, it does kind of remind you of the SIG action, but aesthetically, it's definitely not a SIG. And that's what this gun is. It has a great reputation, known for having a good trigger, and back in the day, it was a pretty affordable gun. It wasn't too expensive, and of course, it was trying to compete with the likes of Glock stock, of course, with this polymer frame, which the 95 first came out with in about 1996. And it was, of course, competing with, at that time, the Smith & Wesson series of semi-automatic pistols before the M&P line, which, of course, are also very popular now, but those are discontinued just like this one is. So this is like a little bit of a blast from the past, and you can tell it doesn't have an accessory rail, no place to mount any optics. It is definitely something from the 90s. But you know, sometimes these older guns are a lot of fun, and it's great to see the evolution of how we got to where we are today by appreciating and shooting these older pistols. So let's talk about the things that I like and don't like about this gun, and as always, let's talk about the things that I like first. And the first thing I really like about this gun is, as far as I can tell, it's not really a copy of anything else. One of my criticisms of Ruger for a long time is they take designs from other companies or long-standing designs and just build copies of that. Like they've copied the Walther P22. Of course, they make 1911s and AR-15s, but a lot of companies do that. But many of their other pistols, like the Vaquero, is a copy of a Colt single-action Army. Yes, they do make their own style of firearms like the Ruger 1022. However, many times they're copying other designs, and this one does not appear to be that way. It really seems like they designed this one for the most part from the ground up. They didn't borrow heavily from another model, and so I really like that. I like that innovation. They're not trying to borrow and steal from other companies. And I'm not saying that Ruger always does that, but they sure seem to do it a lot. So it's very refreshing to get to shoot a gun that seems to be its own thing. Also, handling it here on the table, this gun is a robust gun. It is not designed for concealed carry. I guess you could carry it if you could find a holster for it, but the dimensions of this gun are pretty beefy. I mean, you got a thick slide. The frame is thick. You hold it, and I got big hands. This thing is a big, robust gun. Some people may like that, some people may not, but I like bigger guns because I think they just fit in my hand better, and of course they're going to have better ergonomics and lower recoil. Something else that's really interesting about this design that I like is the magazine release. The button up here, you don't push in, you actually push forward, and I find that to be quite unique and actually very ergonomic, and I'm surprised more companies have not caught that. You have the German style releases, which you can push down. You have mini that you just push in. I don't think I've ever had one where you push forward. It's different and it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's definitely interesting and different, and I like that. It's forward thinking. Something else that's really cool about this is that this slide is very easy to rack. I really can't show it on camera because you'd have to really experience it for yourself, but it reminds me a lot of like the Smith & Wesson Easy, the M&P Easy that's designed for women, and it's supposed to have a very easy slide to rack, and this one does as well. And I'm not sure if that's just part of the design or they did that on purpose or it just happened because of the design, but this gun is very easy to load, very easy to manipulate, and I think from just handling it here might be a great option for people with weaker hands or ladies. But of course, you don't have to be one of those demographics to enjoy this gun, but I was very surprised about that. The trigger shoe is also really nice. I like how it is curved, it is robust, and when my finger is on that trigger, it feels really good. There's a lot of surface area, it's rounded really nice, there's not really any sharp edges. That's nice, and I like the fact that this gun is double action, single action, and when I pull the trigger here, it has a very nice smooth double action, really light compared to many other double actions, and the single action is really short. When it comes to the take-up, has a nice wall, feels really good. Reset might be just a little bit on the long side, but it has a tactile and audible reset. Yeah, I really feel like this gun feels good in my hands. However, now let's talk about a couple things about this gun that I don't like, and this is going to seem a little bit contradictory, compared to what I just said. And the first thing is, the gun feels cheap. Even though it's robust, it feels cheap. There's something about Ruger that for me just doesn't feel quality. When it comes to many of their guns, they use castings and not forged metal. And even when it comes to their polymer, especially polymer from the 1990s, this doesn't feel like Glock polymer. When you inspect the frame of this gun, you see many of the molding marks. You can see where they injected the polymer into the molds. You also can see the marks on the back, the lines. It just looks a little bit cheap. It feels a little bit cheap. The polymer doesn't feel as dense as the Glock. It's just something about it. Even the metal up here doesn't feel like it's as quality. I'm not sure if this is a stamped sheet metal slide or what the material is. It doesn't necessarily feel like stainless steel, but it might be. I read somewhere that it was. It's just a very, very light slide. And even though this is made of lighter materials, it doesn't mean this is a less quality of a gun. It just means that it gives you the perception that it doesn't feel as good. And that even goes to today's Rugers, and one of the complaints I've always had with them. They just don't feel like a substantial, well-made gun. But it doesn't mean they're not. It just has that perception to me. And maybe some of you guys that have shot or owned Rugers kind of know what I'm talking about. But that's just a me thing. But if you love Rugers, I think they're still great, and you guys can love them. We can disagree on that and still be friends, right? In the gun community. But now let's talk about the gun's looks. This is something else I don't like. Now, normally I like the look of older guns. However, this one I just don't think has that timeless look to it. To me, it looks like a very dated gun. Kind of looks like something that you'd see out of maybe like a 1960s sci-fi. Those cocking serrations, the balance of the gun. It's also really thick, so that might be hard to conceal carry. But the aesthetics of the gun, I just don't think I like too much. Some people, as I said, may absolutely love it and may have a lot of nostalgia for a gun that looks like this, but for me, I don't know, it just looks a little bit dated. It's not a cool nostalgia look, it's a dated nostalgia look. But I'm sure when this gun came out, it looked space-aged and people absolutely loved it and probably bought it because of those aesthetics. However, looking back on this gun 30 years later, I just kind of feel like it lacks in that department. But I know that has absolutely nothing to do with the way this gun is going to perform. But speaking about this gun's performance, let's get it to the range. I'm going to load up both of these magazines. One's a 15 rounder, one's a 10 rounder. And you know it's a 10 rounder because you can see that limiter on the bottom. And this is an artifact of that 1990s assault weapons ban where magazines can only hold 10 rounds. We're going to get this thing to the range. I can't wait to shoot it, find out what my initial thoughts and impressions are, and just see how this trigger is, because everyone's talking about how nice these P-Series triggers are. So let's get it to the range. As always, I'm going to set up the target at 7 yards, put 2 magazines down range, and let's just see how this thing shoots. And I have to say, this thing is a very shootable pistol. I've already talked about how easy the slide is to rack and how good it feels in my hand. But the recoil impulse of this pistol is awesome. It feels so light. I was actually thinking it was going to have a little bit more recoil because that slide being racked so easy might mean that that recoil spring might not be able to absorb a lot of that energy, but I think it does a great job. The accuracy is okay. I was pretty happy with it. It's an okay group for that distance and for my first shots, just kind of learning how these sights are set up and where the point of impact is. But overall, I'm very impressed with it. I also really like this trigger, and I understand why so many people said these P-Series pistols had a nice trigger. It's not a target trigger, but it's definitely a very nice duty trigger. All right, so now let's set the target out at about twice the distance, at about 15 yards. I'm going to go for the head on the same IDPA target, see what happens to this group. I'm going to try to take my time on this, and just to see if I can find out anything else about this gun that I like or don't like, and just see if I can shoot it any better. All right, so I did have a couple of flyers there, but overall the accuracy of this gun is pretty good. It's what I refer to as practical accuracy. This gun is not a target gun, it's not a competition gun, it's not a race gun, but I think as a duty gun or a personal protection gun, it's perfectly fine. I don't shoot it like a tack driver, but overall I'm pretty confident I can get almost all those rounds on target in a stressful situation, and the gun really does feel good in my hand. And I want to talk about that because I mentioned how earlier when I was examining this gun, I said it kind of feels a little bit cheap. But remember, just because a gun might have that perception doesn't mean the gun actually is cheap. That's something about Rugers. Everybody knows they do make a quality firearm. And so far, the performance of this gun definitely proves that. It just doesn't have, for me, that feel that equals its performance. I know that's a qualitative thing, but just something that I really feel like I need to express in this range report. But so far, I'm very happy with this and very impressed by it. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is put the target out about as far as I can at this indoor range. I'm going to shoot this from the bench. I'm going to rest it up against a barrier. Now, the only problem with this is at this distance, I always can't see the point of impact on these targets, but I'm going to do my very best, really take my time, try to stage this single stage trigger and get the best grouping I can at the furthest distance I can shoot at. So here we go, shooting this up against a barrier and bench resting it, and let's see how I do. Now, I do really think this gun is very accurate. Now, that wasn't the best group in the world, but as I said, I can't really see where those bullets are going through the target at that range. So I'm just trying to be as consistent as I can with these sights. And these sights are pretty good. It is a 3-dot setup, and I was just trying to put it right in the center of that target, but I could not see that group from that distance. But I'm so far pretty happy with it. And I've already talked about how nice this trigger is. So what I want to do is get out the Lyman trigger pull gauge, and I want to test this trigger out both in single action and double action, because I think you guys are actually going to be quite impressed with this. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera, get out that gauge, and let's test this trigger. Alright, so I've talked about how nice this trigger is in this Ruger P95DC, so let's test it out. I got the Lyman trigger pull gauge out, and by the way, once again, I want to thank Craig, who's a local fan and subscriber, who gave the channel this because he wanted more quantifiable data on all of my range reports. Let's go ahead and drop the magazine. Of course, safety check the gun, ensure that there's no ammunition inside of it. Looks like we're good. We're going to go ahead and test the single action trigger first. So let's go ahead and make sure that the average is clear. And here we go for our first pull. Single action. 3 pounds, 11 ounces. £4 right on the dot. £4, 2.7 ounces. £3, 12.6 ounces. And finally, 4 pounds, 3.0 ounces, which gives us an average on the single action side of this trigger at 3 pounds, 15.5 ounces. That is a pretty darn good trigger pull. I'm very impressed by this trigger. That is something I was not expecting. Now, I've talked about how nice this trigger is all around, and people have also said in previous reviews that this thing has a fantastic double action pull that's not too heavy. So let's test that out now. Of course, check the gun, and we're going to use the decocker after each racking of the slide to make sure we have the same mechanics when I pull the trigger back. Let me clear the average out, and let's try this double action now. So here we go. First pull, 9 pounds, 13.1 ounces. £9, 8.7 ounces. £10 right on the dot. £10, 0.3 ounces. And then finally we have £9, 7.5 ounces, which gives us an average on the double action side of this trigger, £9, 12.3 ounces. Now, I think this is absolutely fantastic because I have tested many double action triggers with this gauge, and many times they're just too heavy to read. This thing is a pretty darn light and very nice double action pull. It is very, very crisp. And I think I'm going to have to shoot this thing double action only in a future part of this range report. So let's get back, let's talk about this trigger a little bit more, and then we'll get back to the range and shoot this thing double action only. And I told you this is a very good trigger, both in double action and in single action. It is really, really light. Not too light, not too heavy. It is a very well-balanced trigger that is very smooth and predictable. Now, like when I review SIGs that are double action, single action, I want to do a complete magazine in double action only the entire time. So after every shot, I will use this decocker, which is mounted on the slide. I'll decock the hammer and shoot a double action each time. And I'm kind of curious because normally when I do this with SIGs, I actually shoot them better than when they're in single action. So maybe I'll have a duplicate result with this. So here we go, the double action pull on a complete magazine, and let's see how I shoot it. And there you go. I'm super happy with those results. And for some reason, even though it is a longer and heavier trigger pull, I shoot it really well, just like my SIGs. Maybe I'm just taking my time with it, but I'm very impressed with that. And I can tell you, most of the inaccuracies with this gun, I can tell are me and not the gun. That if I got used to this gun, trained with it more, shot it more, I really think this thing would be even better than how I'm shooting it and could be a really, really accurate gun. I think it's pretty good now, but it would be very, very accurate. Now, I know some people are going to ask, hey, that's a gun from the 90s. Can it take hollow points? Can it shoot hollow points without any issue? Most likely the answer is yes, but some of you guys might find one of these at a gun show or maybe a pawn shop and think that might be a good bedside gun. And of course, you're going to want to use hollow point ammunition. So let me load up another magazine. I'm going to use some hollow points, make sure that they feed and run through this with no problem. And then we're going to move on to the quick magazine change test. But before that, let's shoot some hollow points. And as expected, it ran great, and the accuracy is getting better as I'm getting more used to this gun. So you can run hollow points through it, no problem. And as I said, the next thing I want to do is the quick magazine change. I also want to see how fast I can shoot this gun because this trigger is outstanding. And I've already talked about how cool this magazine release button is that you push forward. It's very natural and ergonomic and makes a lot of sense. And I think I'll be able to drop the magazine, which by the way, these things fly out of there really quick, get the next magazine in and get this gun back in action. So let's see how fast I can shoot this, exchange the magazines, and get the gun back in action. All right, and did you catch it? Well, something awesome really happened, and that was I can shoot this gun really fast. But did you catch the thing that was bad that happened? Yeah, I actually had a part on this gun fly off. And in case you missed it, let me slow down the footage and show you what happened. Yeah, it looks like the right side of the decocker on the slide literally fell off the gun. For a second there, I thought I was reviewing a Kel-Tec because that's happened to a couple of Kel-Tecs that I've reviewed in the past. Parts fall off. I'm not used to that with Ruger. Now, this decocker, I can literally just pull out of the gun. I don't know if there's supposed to be some type of detent in here that's supposed to hold it in place. I've looked in there. I don't see anything missing. I would have to go back to a schematic, but I can't find a schematic on this gun. So I'm going to assume there might be something in there that's broke or missing, but maybe not. Maybe this thing is supposed to be in there with just friction, or maybe it's held in there by the extractor, which does seem to line up with this little groove that's in it, but I can take this decocker in and out of this pistol with no problem, as you can see. So it flies off the gun when I shoot it fast or a lot. So I don't know if that's a design flaw or it's missing something. And maybe some of you guys in the comment section can tell me what in the heck happened. But I'm not used to parts of the gun flying off when I'm shooting them. So yeah, that does give me a little bit of concern. All right, so the last thing I want to do is give my wife Becky a chance to shoot this. She always likes to try out every gun that comes through the Texas Gun Vault, and as I mentioned, this is a very easy gun to rack the slide on, and the ergonomics are really nice. So I think she's going to like it as a lady, because sometimes the women don't want those guns that are hard to rack, hard to load. So I'm curious to get her thoughts. So let me load up another magazine and give her a chance to shoot it and see what her thoughts are. And that was actually not the result that I was expecting. She said that she really enjoyed shooting this, that this gun was very easy for her to load, manipulate, and shoot. However, she was not very accurate with it. And sometimes you guys laugh at me here at the Texas Gun Vault because my wife will shoot a gun better than I do, and she's not as experienced as I am. But that just goes to show that not every gun is for everyone. And I actually thought she was going to shoot this thing really, really well. She was disappointed in that grouping. She just had a hard time getting this thing to group well. But from a shootability standpoint, she absolutely loved it and said that would make a great bedside gun, and I completely agree. But I think with a little bit of time, training, and experience on it, I think this could be a very accurate gun for her. She would just kind of have to figure out how it shoots and its tendencies, but I think she could do great in time. But you would just need to put a lot more rounds down range. So what are my final thoughts on the Ruger P95DC? Well, this gun really surprised me in a number of different ways, and many of them are positive. The thing I love about this gun is how shootable it is. What a great trigger. The slide is so easy to manipulate. The magazines are easy to load. All the controls are where you would want them. The decocker works great. Well, I guess with the exception of the right side of it falling out of the gun when you shoot it fast. The magazine release button, which is ambi, you push it forward, very ergonomic. It's very natural. This gun just feels really good in my hand. I really like that. It really did surprise me. I did not think that's what I would come away in this review thinking. However, the gun was okay when it came to accuracy. I think I could definitely take my time with it a little bit more if I had a chance to put 1,000 rounds through this thing. I could really warm up to it and probably shoot it pretty darn well. However, I did have that right side of the decocker fly off. I'm not a big fan of when guns fall apart at the range. It makes me question the quality. And speaking of the quality, I do have the perception it's just not as nice as other guns from other companies. Now, whether or not that's true, and I'm sure I've offended some people who are big Ruger fans, I understand why, but it's just the perception, and perception is reality. It definitely shoots like a quality gun, but it doesn't feel like a quality gun. And I think if I'm going to put my money down on a firearm, I might go in a little bit different direction. But I understand completely why people absolutely love this gun, have nostalgia about this gun, and the whole P series of pistols from Ruger. There's just people out there that are Ruger fans. I'm a B&T HK Colt guy. Some people love Ruger, and I completely respect it. But on my star system, which is my own personal rating on how I feel about the gun and how it performed for me, what would I give the Ruger P95DC? Well, out of 5 stars, this thing easily gets 3.5 stars. Not a great review, about average. But hopefully, based off of my experiences, you can see why I gave it that rating. I did have a part fly off the gun at the range, and that has to say something in the final result. But the gun is very shootable. It did surprise me, and I kind of like it. Not enough for me to maybe go out and find one and buy one, and I'm really glad I got a chance to shoot it. It did surprise me in a positive way, but only 3.5 stars. The trigger in it is really nice, probably the best selling point of it. Not a big fan of the aesthetics and not a fan of parts of it falling off at the range, but everything else was really good. So 3.5 stars out of 5 Ruger P95DC. What do you guys think? Have you ever owned one of these, shot one of these, or any of the other P-Series pistols from Ruger? And do you guys think I was too harsh on this gun? Sometimes people say I'm biased when it comes to these reviews, which is fair, but I do try to be honest with you guys and give you guys my personal perspective and thoughts and be as honest as I can. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you like Ruger, and do you like the old P-Series? So, as always, thanks for watching.